March 14th, 1943. The morning sun cuts through low clouds over the Ardennes forest in northern France. Unteroffizier Karl Weber wipes frost from his leather flight goggles, gripping the throttle of his Messerschmitt Bf 109 as he climbs to intercept the incoming formation. The radio crackles with static. Formation at high altitude, 21,000 feet. Large bombers. The voice of Hauptmann Dietrich Vogel trembles with disbelief. Karl squints through the thin morning haze and freezes. What he sees is unlike anything the Luftwaffe has faced before. A squadron of enormous four-engine aircraft stretching across the horizon. Their silver fuselages glint in the weak sunlight, their wingspan dwarfing even the most formidable German twin-engine bombers. By God, they're huge, he mutters under his breath. These are Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses, and their sheer scale is a shock to every German pilot in the area. Normally, a formation of bombers could be picked apart by concentrated Bf 109 squadrons or anti-aircraft fire, but these Flying Fortresses seem to shrug off hits that would down lesser planes. Karl's stomach knots as he watches tracers from 88 mm flak guns scream upward, ripping holes in the formation, yet the massive bombers maintain their course, unwavering, dropping incendiaries over strategic targets below. The B-17's resilience is almost unreal. One hits the tail, smoke trailing like a banner, and yet it continues on, engines screaming. Another takes multiple hits across the fuselage. Still it keeps pace, delivering its bombs over a railway junction near Liège. German anti-aircraft crews on the ground watch in stunned silence. "We've never seen anything survive like that," one sergeant mutters, staring at the sky as the fortresses glide past. Inside the cockpit, Karl's co-pilot, Gefreiter Hans Müller, swallows hard. They're built like fortresses," he whispers. Every man in the sky senses it. These aren't ordinary planes. They're weapons designed not just to strike, but to endure. The pilots exchange brief, tense glances, adjusting throttle and flaps, trying to find a weakness in the formation, any opening to exploit. But time and again, every attack is repelled by the bombers' tight defensive fire. Each B-17 bristles with up to 1350 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, covering every angle, creating a lethal envelope of fire. Below, the French countryside is scorched by explosive and incendiary bombs. Smoke rises in jagged columns, mingling with the low-hanging clouds, casting a surreal grey pall over farmland and villages. Wehrmacht officers on observation posts stare in disbelief as their carefully calculated defences seem futile. For years, the German military had relied on superior tactical aircraft and disciplined formations to dominate airspace. Today, that assumption lies shattered in the bitter March air. By midday, the first wave of bombers begins to retreat toward England, engines roaring across the horizon. Karl lands on a frozen field airstrip, shaking, his fingers numb around the control stick. "They're indestructible," he says aloud, and even he knows it isn't true. But in this moment of confrontation, it feels as if the sky itself belongs to these American machines. The intelligence reports will confirm what every German soldier already suspects. The B-17 is more than a plane. It is a harbinger of a new kind of warfare, one that Germany is ill-prepared to counter. March 14th, 1943, 10:32 a.m. Over the skies near Liège, Hauptmann Dietrich Vogel rallies his squadron, a mix of Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulf FW 190s, weaving through thin clouds in tight formation. The Luftwaffe pilots have been briefed: intercept, break the bomber formation, shoot down as many as possible before they reach their target. Yet as they close the distance, reality sets in. The first Bf 109s peel off to attack the trailing bombers. Unteroffizier Karl Weber lines up his gun sight, adjusting for speed and wind. A flying fortress looms ahead, engines roaring, tail guns tracking his every move. He fires a long burst from his 20mm cannon, watching tracer rounds slam into the fuselage. The bomber shudders, metal wrinkling, smoke curling from the port engine, and still it presses forward, dropping bombs on the rail yard below. "Keep your distance!" Vogel shouts over the radio, frustration lacing his tone. "Their defensive fire is lethal! Don't get too close!" Carl nods, though the comm is short-lived. Each pilot is too focused on survival to reply. From his cockpit, the chaos is dizzying. The B-17's formation forms a near-impenetrable lattice of 50-caliber machine gun fire, each bomber covering its neighbour. Attempts to flank or dive on isolated aircraft are met with deadly precision. One of his comrades, Lieutenant Friedrich Hartmann, is cut down within minutes, his plane trailing smoke as he struggles to maintain altitude. The squadron watches, helpless, as the pilot bails out over the frozen fields. Below, anti-aircraft crews are similarly stunned. Battery Sergeant Major Wilhelm Krauss mutters under his breath, "Hit them anywhere and they keep flying. It's impossible." The German 88mm guns launch salvo after salvo, black puffs of flak exploding in the sky. Some shells connect, ripping gashes through wings and fuselages. A bomber spirals downward, flames licking the clouds. Yet another continues to its target, unfazed, dropping its payload with deadly accuracy. Carl's heart pounds in his chest as he maneuvers his 109 in a desperate climb, trying to gain altitude to dive on the nearest bomber. The cockpit shakes violently as return fire tears into the wings and fuselage of a nearby FW-190. Smoke stings his eyes. Somewhere above, the deafening roar of the B-17 engines and machine guns forms a terrifying symphony, the sky alive with fire and steel. Every pilot knows it. Their tactics, honed over years, are struggling against this relentless American machine. Minutes stretch into an eternity. A second wave of B-17s emerges over the horizon, escorted by P-47 Thunderbolts that Carl had not expected. The Luftwaffe pilots had anticipated a single formation, but now they face overwhelming numbers, both bombers and their fighter protection. The initial shock turns into panic for some, a grim determination for others. Carl's co-pilot, Hans Müller, grips the controls, his face pale. We can't stop them all," he whispers, voice trembling. By noon, the bombing run ends. The B-17s retreat, engines roaring across the horizon, leaving a landscape of smoking rail yards, shattered warehouses, and scorched fields. German pilots regroup, landing on frozen strips, stunned by the scale, durability, and firepower of the American bombers. Officers tally losses, both planes and men, realizing that the B-17 is not simply a bomber, it is a weapon designed to endure, to strike deep, and to force a reckoning on the Luftwaffe. Vogel, wiping sweat and grime from his face, mutters, "This changes everything. We cannot fight them the way we fought before." The words hang in the bitter March air, heavy with the unspoken truth. The air war over Europe has entered a new, terrifying phase, one where sheer resilience and firepower may outmatch skill and courage. March 15th, 1943. Berlin. Hauptquartiers der Luftwaffe. Generaloberst Hans-Jürgen Stumpf leans over a large map illuminated by a single hanging lamp, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling. Reports are spread before him. Losses from yesterday's sorties, witness statements from pilots like Karl Weber, and intelligence intercepts from British reconnaissance. His face, usually composed, tightens as he reads the numbers. 73 aircraft, gone in one day, and they still reached their targets, he mutters, voice heavy with disbelief. Across the room, Oberstleutnant Heinrich Falkenberg taps his finger along the map, tracing the flight path of the B-17 formations. "They aren't just resilient," Falkenberg says, almost to himself. "They can absorb punishment that would destroy any German plane. Entire squadrons could be wiped out, and the bombers keep going." He looks up at Stumpf, eyes wide. We cannot counter this with our current tactics, not at these altitudes, not without heavier aircraft. Meanwhile, in the barracks near Liège, Unteroffizier Karl Weber and his fellow pilots sit in silence, cleaning their guns and inspecting their planes. The mood is subdued. The adrenaline of yesterday's battle has faded, replaced by a grim understanding. "I've never seen anything like it," Karl whispers to Müller, his voice low, almost reverent. "We used to believe a plane could be taken down with precision, but these, they endure everything." Their commanding officer, Hauptmann Vogel, paces the room, boots clacking against the wooden floor. "Listen," he says, stopping before the squadron. "Tomorrow we fly again, and tomorrow we will meet them once more. But know this, these flying fortresses are different. They are more than a plane. They are a challenge to everything we thought we knew about air superiority." The men nod, but in their eyes is the same mixture of fear and awe that has gripped every pilot who has seen a B-17 up close. Across the Reich, the Reichsluftfahrtministerium scrambles to adapt. Technical reports arrive daily from frontline units. Structural integrity, defensive gun placements, bomb load capacities. Engineers calculate new intercept strategies. Officers debate altitude, formation, and timing. The consensus is grim. The Luftwaffe cannot meet the Americans on equal terms without significant losses. Every tactic that had worked in France, Poland, and Norway seems insufficient. Karl lies awake that night in the barracks, staring at the ceiling. He thinks of the massive silver wings cutting across the horizon, the relentless machine guns, the bombers that shrug off flak like it were nothing. He recalls the look of his comrades, the smoke rising from the rail yards, and the fear and fascination etched into every officer's face. "We underestimated them," he whispers into the darkness. "Completely." By March 16th, Luftwaffe intelligence formally warns that strategic bombing by the United States Army Air Forces is becoming a decisive factor. Plans are drafted to concentrate fighter wings, to introduce heavier aircraft like the Me-262 jet, though those are still in development, and to deploy flak batteries in unprecedented numbers. Even then, the reports stress the Americans are adapting faster than Germany can counter. The realization settles in across the command chain. The B-17 Flying Fortress is not just a bomber, it is a statement of industrial might, resilience, and tactical evolution. As Karl and Vogel prepare for another sortie, the sky above the Ardennes is clear, deceptively calm. But both men know that above them, the silver silhouettes will appear again. Engines roaring, bristling with guns, unstoppable. The Luftwaffe faces not merely a battle, but a shift in the very rules of aerial warfare. A test of endurance, skill and survival that no pilot could ignore. April the 2nd, 1943, over the Ruhr Valley, Germany's industrial heart. Unteroffizier Karl Weber sits tense in his Messerschmitt Bf 109, the cold wind biting through his flight jacket as he climbs toward 21,000 feet. Intelligence reports indicate a massive raid incoming. Nearly 70 B-17s escorted by P-47 Thunderbolts. The German airfields are alive with frantic activity. Mechanics rush to ready planes. Officers shout orders over static-filled radios, and flak crews lay in positions, ready for the incoming storm. As Karl breaks through the thin clouds, the formation comes into view. The B-17s stretch across the horizon like silver battalions, each plane bristling with defensive firepower. Anti-aircraft batteries already erupt below, sending plumes of black smoke skyward, but the bombers maintain altitude, their trajectory unwavering. Karl feels his stomach tighten as he lines up for a dive. Yet even as rounds impact the leading aircraft, the fortresses shrug off the assault, engines screaming defiantly. "This is insane!" shouts Lieutenant Friedrich Hartmann over the radio, his voice trembling. "They keep coming, and nothing can stop them." The pilots maneuver aggressively, trying to disrupt the formation, yet the sheer size, durability, and coordination of the B-17s leaves them stunned. Machine guns from multiple angles cut across the sky, forcing the German fighters into evasive maneuvers. One pilot yells as tracer fire rakes across his cockpit, narrowly missing him. He pulls back sharply, his heart racing. On the ground, Generaloberst Stumpf reviews reconnaissance photos from previous raids. The evidence is undeniable. Factories reduced to rubble, rail networks crippled, oil depots in flames. He turns to his staff, face drawn. These raids are not just destructive, they are strategic. Entire German production lines are being crippled before we can respond. Our fighters can't stop them, and our defences are insufficient. The room is silent. Officers exchange grim nods. The realisation is universal. The Luftwaffe is facing a new reality, and the B-17 Flying Fortress is at the centre of it. Back in the sky, Karl watches as a lead bomber releases its payload over Essen. Fire and smoke consume a steelworks, the explosions shaking the air. The sheer audacity and endurance of the formation leave even the most seasoned pilots in awe. Hans Müller, Karl's co-pilot, mutters, voice barely audible. It's unstoppable. It just keeps going. The words echo the thoughts of every German soldier who has witnessed the fortresses. No matter the flak, no matter the fighter attacks, these bombers will complete their mission. By late afternoon, the B-17s withdraw, engines roaring over the horizon, leaving devastation below and a shaken Luftwaffe in their wake. Officers tally losses. Nearly a dozen fighters down, pilots wounded, morale strained. Karl lands his Bf-109, hands trembling as he shuts down the engine. Vogel approaches, eyes shadowed. We've been shown the future, he says softly, and it isn't ours. In Berlin, the Reichsluftfahrtministerium convenes an emergency meeting. Plans are drafted to increase fighter production, develop heavier interceptors, and strengthen flak coverage. Yet even the most optimistic projections admit the problem. America's industrial capacity can replace losses faster than Germany can inflict them. The B-17 is no longer just an aircraft. It is a symbol of strategic dominance, a physical manifestation of a war that Germany is increasingly struggling to control. For Karl, Vogel, and the men of the Luftwaffe, the turning point is clear. The B-17 Flying Fortress has redefined the rules of air combat. It is no longer a battle of skill alone. It is a war of resilience, of production, and of endurance. Every sortie, every engagement is a reminder. The sky belongs to these massive silver fortresses, and to confront them is to face the industrial and tactical might of an opponent unafraid of losses, unflinching in execution, and unstoppable in determination. May 1943. The skies over Germany have grown colder, harder to navigate, yet every sortie brings the same realization. The B-17 Flying Fortress is more than a bomber. It is a force that reshapes the war. Unteroffizier Karl Weber, now weary from weeks of combat, sits on the frozen tarmac, inspecting his Bf-109 as smoke from distant industrial raids curls into the clouds. Around him, the airfield buzzes with activity, but the mood is subdued. Even the bravest pilots share the same haunted expression: respect tinged with fear. Reports from frontline units confirm the growing psychological impact of the fortresses. German soldiers on the ground speak of massive silver aircraft appearing above, engines roaring like thunder, dropping their deadly payloads with near imperviousness. Intelligence officers note that the Americans' industrial output allows for continuous replenishment of losses. Every B-17 lost is soon replaced, their formations growing larger, their raids more precise. The scale and durability of these bombers force the Luftwaffe to reconsider tactics, to develop new intercept strategies, and to invest in aircraft that may never see the front lines in time. Karl reflects on the pilots he has lost, the friends who will never return from encounters with the flying fortresses. He remembers the first day he saw them, the shock in his stomach, the awe in his eyes. "We were trained to believe no plane could survive what we delivered," he mutters to Müller, who nods silently. "But they did, and they keep coming." The war above Germany is no longer just a series of engagements. It is a relentless campaign where endurance, coordination, and sheer industrial might determine the outcome. The legacy of the B-17 extends beyond the pilots and the front lines. High Command realizes that traditional defensive strategies are insufficient. Factories and railways are dispersed, flak batteries concentrated in cities, and fighters scrambled in waves. Yet, every tactic reveals the same truth. The flying fortress endures. Even the most heavily damaged aircraft completes its mission, forcing Germany to adapt not just to a machine, but to a paradigm shift in warfare. For Karl and his comrades, the lesson is inescapable. The sky is no longer dominated by skill alone. It is defined by resilience, by the ability to absorb punishment, and by the relentless determination of an enemy who can replace losses faster than Germany can inflict them. As they prepare for yet another sortie over the Ruhr, the pilots know they are witnessing a turning point in aerial warfare, one that will echo through every battle, every raid, and every strategic decision that follows. The B-17 Flying Fortress did more than survive flak and fighters. It shattered illusions, forced a re-evaluation of air strategy, and demonstrated the overwhelming power of American industry and tactical ingenuity. German soldiers couldn't believe the size, the endurance, and the ferocity of these bombers when they first encountered them, and that disbelief would mark the beginning of a long, grueling shift in the skies over Europe, a shift that would ultimately help decide the outcome of the war.